I got back from GAMA, the tabletop games industry expo, a couple of weeks ago. I know, I'm sorry, I've had a very busy time and trying to get a lot of other content done for you all, but I did manage to play a few TCGs that were new to me while I was at the show, and I just wanted to talk about those with you guys and let you know the 3 that really stood out to me the most. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. What's up, everyone? It's Dan with Main Deck, and as I said, we're going to be going over some TCGs that I tried out at GAMA 2026 and just talk about how I felt about them, kind of rank them in a little bit. This is a lot shorter than a lot of our other ranking multiple TCG videos. I am going to mention that I'm not going to cover the Bushy Road Pal World game because I didn't get a chance to play it. They had a small window to try it and I did not manage to fit that into my schedule. The other game I'm not going to cover in here is the Cyberpunk TCG because I've already played it. It wasn't new to me. It was new to a lot of people at GAMA this year, but I've already got a review video. Wait, it's right over here. A review video you can go watch if you want to hear some of my in-depth thoughts, and I've already published several videos on that game. We're going to cover games that I haven't published anything on yet because they were totally new to me, and the first one we're going to jump into is the Journey TCG. You're going to see this right away and you're going to get what this is about. This is a Japanese RPG, like 16-bit era JRPG themed trading card game. And like, why is that such a fresh feeling theme? Why is that not so? That feels like it makes sense, right? It's like there's a lot, I think, of overlap in the demographics of TCG players and players who grew up playing Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VI, and beyond that, it just pixel art, retro art like that, very popular, is very cool. I had a great time talking with the creator of this game at the show. We dug into a lot of the gameplay and a lot of their kind of plans and ideas, and did get to play a full game of it. And I will say, gameplay-wise, it was intriguing. It was a game that like most reminded me of, this is gonna sound weird, but Flesh and Blood, actually, in that you have a team of heroes instead of just a single hero, and you're trying to fight your opponent's team of heroes and just take them from full health to 0. There's no natural like playing resources and escalating. Instead, you're drawing a new hand of cards every turn, and that cycles down and you draw new ones every turn. And instead of like blocking attacks back and forth, this is the departure from Flesh and Blood, you're simply going to play the attacks, and there are a couple of like interaction things that can happen, but you're just going to deal that damage. And your opponent might have a healer who can recover some health from party members. You might have ways to like negate effects, negate damage. And based on the classes that you build your team out with, you have access to all sorts of different abilities like that you can play, as well as some like inherent abilities. So like one question I asked was, how can I hold a card from one turn to another? Because that is something that you can do in games like Flesh and Blood, games where you're cycling your hand. It's important to be able to hold on to those cards. And the answer was, yeah, you can do that if your team has a strategist class. And that was like, oh, okay, that's cool. There are some interesting ways you can build your teams. Like, do you build a whole bunch of DPS and just go for as much damage as possible, but then you're beholden to whatever you draw? Do you try to put in a healer, put in kind of like a traditional Final Fantasy party layout? You got a warrior, a mage, a healer, or do you put in those more interesting classes, the strategist? Like, what does that allow you to take advantage of by being able to keep those? So I liked a lot of that. I do wish that there was some more escalation. As if you guys have followed me on the channel for a while, one thing I talk about in games a lot is that I really like when there's a sense of movement and moving in towards a climax as your game goes on. I think that there's a really important ludo narrative that happens as you start a game at a low power level and reach a higher one, reach your apex, get to that exciting dramatic finish that makes you just want to start another game again. And that's one thing that hasn't always worked for me about Flesh and Blood. And with the Journey, I had the same question. Like, there are some cards, like eventually my Berserker was able to Berserk mode and started to do more damage, which was cool. But one thing that we talked about was the possibility of in the future having like advanced classes or things like that where your characters are able to grow in the same way you'd expect in a JRPG, like an experience system, things like that. That's something that I really think is important in a game. But beyond missing that component, it was fun. It was cool looking. It has, I think, some intriguing deck building and obviously a really interesting theme. So that was the Journey TCG. It was cool to see a very indie game, but of course, they were in the right place at GAMA to be able to connect to distributors and retailers and get all this feedback. So I hope it continues to do well. It is definitely the most indie game on the list. The next game I'm going to talk about is the Hellbreak TCG. And this is very interesting. It's a horror-themed TCG, but I feel like it approaches horror in a way that a lot of people aren't necessarily going to expect, because you might think, okay, a horror TCG, it's going to be all about evoking emotion and fear and suspense and the psychological thrill of horror movies. But this is really more of, I would say, like a theme park style approach to horror, where they're actually getting a lot of IPs. This is Universal and Spin Master who are doing this game. So you get the Universal horror universe and everything. But they are grabbing up to, I think they said around 11 or 12 IPs right now that are going to be in the game. I know I heard A Quiet Place was mentioned, and then the demo decks were Dracula versus Jaws. So very eclectic, a whole bunch of just different horror IPs that you're going to get to see your favorite horror villains, characters in this game. And so if you're looking for something that's really gritty and psychological, this is more about just, hey, cool, Dracula's going to fight Jaws now. That said, I'm a big Dracula fan, so I saw that, I sat down, I was excited to try the game out. As I tried the game out, I found out this is very heavily inspired by games like Star Wars Unlimited. This is a game with 2 lanes where you have a leader that can flip to an aside where they can go in and attack and deal more damage. And you're ultimately trying to use those attacking on those 2 lanes to deal enough damage to take your opponent out. Some of the core differences that to me were, it's a multi-resource game, first of all. These resources are in tokens, and this makes the whole game feel like a little bit more fiddly. One thing I love about Star Wars Unlimited is how smoothly it plays. This one wasn't as smooth, and in the demo experience I had, my opponent definitely had probably less TCG experience and was asking a lot of questions throughout the game and having just a little bit of trouble just kind of intuitively understanding everything going on, which makes sense because the game was quite a bit more fiddly with those extra resources. Now, it had some interesting mechanics that I thought were cool. One thing is how it handled initiative in every action phase, because again, like Star Wars Unlimited, it's a back and forth action system. But to get that initiative, you had to take a card from your hand and sort of resource it in a way, but it works differently in this game. But you would, whichever card you chose to be your resource addition would then be shown to your opponent at the same time, and whoever resourced the higher one gets the initiative for the turn. So that's got some pros and cons, obviously. It does kind of funnel you into needing to, if initiative is really important to you, you have certain cards you just kind of have to resource, and you don't get to make that full the full weight of that tactical decision about which cards you keep. But then the way the resource system worked was also interesting in that whichever card you put down would add to the resources you get. And again, there are 2 different ones. It was blood and the green one, terror, something. I can't remember. Maybe someone's going to comment down below with what the green one was called, but you would get blood in the green one. And those then were different card to card as well. So it was whichever card you resourced determined your initiative, but also determined how you added to your resources, because every turn, at the start of the turn, you would just go down your list of cards you resourced at the bottom, and you can see on the picture here, and you would gain those resources. Probably one of my favorite ability words to ever exist in a TCG, jump scare cards, which is literally just the ability word for a damage trigger. But when those are in your damage zone, after you take the 1 ping to move the damage to sideways and then take another hit to flip it over, if it has jump scare, then you get to immediately get the effect. So, it's just damage triggers, but it's a fun keyword, and I like that. Definitely some interesting mechanics. Definitely a fun time. I enjoyed the game straight up. I like Star Wars Unlimited. I liked this. I was playing as Dracula. There were some fun little fiddly resource things, but I'm not just a TCG gamer. I'm a tabletop board game gamer as well. So this all just kind of meshed together for me and it worked. And then we got to jump scare sometimes, and that was kind of fun. Its combat is different than Star Wars. It's got like magic combat, both like Grand Archive Retaliation. It was like kind of a hodgepodge of a lot of different stuff. But if you like horror and you can get into the way that it's portraying horror and the characters, I could see people having fun with this. They were pushing at the booth that there was a very significant overlap between TCG players and horror fans. And I don't doubt that at all. But I do wonder how they got that metric, because it's very different to ask someone, do you like horror movies? And would you buy a TCG about horror movies? Because there's a certain fanaticism that is sort of required to want to invest a lot into a trading card game. The kind of fanaticism that comes with being a fan of Star Wars, being a fan of One Piece, being a fan of League of Legends. Not always that kind of fanaticism exists when you just thought A Quiet Place was pretty good and you read Dracula once and you thought it was pretty cool. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to buy a TCG on it. So I'm curious to see how this pans out when it hits retail. That said, I mean, like I said, I had fun with it, even though it was a fiddly, it was kind of a messy game, and it was a hodgepodge of other game systems. It was fun, and Dracula was cool, and that is Hellbreak TCG. Now, the last game I want to talk about is actually my takeaway for my favorite new-to-me TCG of the weekend, and I would never have predicted this going into the weekend at all, folks. Haikyu TCG, based on the anime about playing volleyball. This game, why was this so good? Why was this game as good as it was? This is from Takara Tomy, pretty big company, who had just canceled their last translated game, which was, they translated We Cross to English most recently, and now they've announced they're translating Haikyu to English. And I sat down for this demo, and I basically understood how to play this game within like a minute, because it's volleyball. This game is volleyball. You see, you got the players here. The players have the stats. The stats are in serving, receiving, setting, attacking, and then they got abilities, and they can also block as well, which you don't want to have to do. You'd rather be fully receiving a ball, but you play the characters to do the thing, and then you play them next to each other, and you know, it's got really cool things where, because you can't double tap the ball in volleyball, so you can't have them both receive and set the ball, but a character name could be played to receive a ball, then another character could set it, and then the same character could attack with it because they have moved and they're going to attack with the ball now. This was like weirdly an incredible simulation of volleyball on a TCG tabletop, and not just volleyball. Like, it's one thing to just be volleyball, but this was volleyball with those exciting anime moments that are going to make me watch this show with my wife. I haven't gotten to see it yet, but we're about to sit down and watch this thing, because I got hyped just playing this game when my opponent attacked me with a stat that was just too high. I think it was an attack of 4. I only had a receive of 2, but I had this event card in my hand where the crowd could cheer me on and give +1 to the receive stat, and then I could draw a card. And if I drew into another one, then I would get to play that second one, get to enough to receive it, and then set an attack really strongly back at the opponent. I played it, I drew the other copy, I played it, and then I was able to even draw another card after that. And then it looked like I had no chance to receive it, but my character managed to receive the ball. We attacked, and then we scored on that turn. And those moments like stuck with me that whole weekend. I was like, wow, that was such a fun experience playing that. Played so elegantly. And, you know, I talked earlier about having escalation in a game. And again, this game, a lot like Journey TCG, doesn't have like a resource system like you would expect from a lot of games necessarily, not in the same way where you're gonna like tap cards in order to pay for costs. Instead, this has, as the game goes on, you build up stacks. You don't actually clear the characters that you play. They build up in each of their positions. And then when you play cards later on, they have an ability where they can get rid of cards underneath them to power them up. So the game still does come to a dramatic head as the receives and the attacks get stronger and stronger as the game goes on, so that it just, you know, it's more exciting, more dramatic, and more fun. And I couldn't believe this game. Look how good also the cards look. Again, Takara Tomy is known, and Wheatcross, they had very, very beautiful looking card productions, card quality, card treatments, textured foils, signatures, interesting things they were doing with colors of foils and hot stamp foils and everything. And I think we're going to see some more of that here, because obviously they have some of the Japanese ones right here that have that beautiful treatment. This is such a niche game. Like, I don't think Haikyu has this ability, obviously, to like take off and be like the #1 TCG in the world. But man, if this sounds fun to you, if you like this anime, or if you're just a volleyball fan or you're a sports fan and want to try playing a sports-based TCG, even if you've never watched this show before, like I haven't, getting a little too hyped, I hit my mic there, then you still should give this game a shot, because it was surprisingly fun, and I do not regret at all playing it, and I hope to get to play it some more. I really, really did enjoy Haikyu TCG. All right, so those are the 3 TCGs I tried at GAMA that I wanted to share with you all. Let me know what you think about any of these 3 TCGs. Which one looks the best to you? Hit me up with that down in the comments below. Sorry I don't have more of this content covering more TCGs. It's been very, very busy. A lot of focused TCG stuff coming out. But I know people have been asking for my comprehensive TCG tier list. That is going to be coming in probably a month or two when I have just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and dive in and give you guys all that. So if you like this kind of content, stick around on the channel, subscribe if you want to see more of that, or if you want to see the other TCGs I do cover in particular. You know, right now we're looking at a lot of Grand Archive, Star Wars Unlimited, and Cyberpunk TCG content on the channel. So if any of those are something that you want to, you know, see more coverage of, feel free to follow along. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Hope you did enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one.